Yeah. 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 So many lies that you hear from the net, they don't get her respect. She reporting the truth, not a check. You want an unbiased opinion straight from the chest, not a bit accomplice or someone here for a check. Tune in, these are thoughts from a lawyer on a mission who goes so hard it's like she works on commission. Trolls in the comments might say she tripping cause they lack the knowledge. They don't know they missing. Got a couple current events that you like. Wanna know about law from the eyes. Tired of all these blogs running lies because their agendas are disguised. Tune in to the intellect, cause I'm sure y'all missing all the facts of the case that she steady is gifting. Someone here for the people, man, it's so uplifting. If you ain't subscribed yet, then you just omitting facts.
Hello, everyone. It is Pam Esquire, also known as your law intellect. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Let me change this view. I don't think I like this. Hold on. Hold up. Let me see something. I'm up here playing with this. I'm sorry. I probably should do that before I came on. I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you guys so much for joining me. For those of you that don't know, my name is Pam Esquire, also known as the Law Intellect. And yeah, we're going to go over Sean Combs. Why are we going over Sean Combs on this here Memorial Day? Because I've had a couple of days to look at some of the commentary from other people. And I'm quite convinced that people just don't understand what the law is and what has to be proved. And partially because it's so much salaciousness going on in the media, and then also all of these documentaries. Someone sent me a documentary yesterday, I guess, from Sarah Stokes from Making the Band. She was just on 60 Minutes Australia. There was also another assistant that was on there. To be interesting to see if he actually testifies or not. But it's just so much going on. And so you get lost in the sauce that you forget what he is being charged with. And I went over that in one of my other videos where I let you all know, I'm like, yes, these are the elements of a racketeering charge, but he is being charged with racketeering conspiracy. What does that mean, Pam? I'm glad you asked. With racketeering conspiracy, which we'll probably go over as well, you don't have to prove the same elements as you do for just a straight up RICO, which leads me to believe that the government probably knew that they could not prove a straight up RICO. However, on top of the racketeering conspiracy, they have also alleged trafficking for a couple of victims, including Cassie, and they also have alleged prostitution. And those are separate counts. Those are separate counts, even though they're also predicate acts that they've laid out under the RICO conspiracy. So, like I said, let's just assume they can't prove the RICO conspiracy, because you do need an agreement, and they haven't been able to prove that. Let's just hypothetically say that. What is going to happen is they still can try to prove the other elements committing a crime on its own. So they don't have to prove this big elaborate scheme. They can just go and say, you did this and you committed this crime as well, right? So one of the interesting pieces of testimony that everybody wanted to know is, why did Don Richard even testify? She got tore up on the stand. The cross-examination was, dismantling. I think she did. Again, Nicole Westmoreland did what needed to be done. She understood the assignment. But sometimes in the transcript, they have the sidebars, which are also recorded. And in the sidebars, which people that are tweeting may not necessarily, I guess, hear, because it's literally like, sometimes they actually have you go to the bench. Other times they don't. They may do it at the tables to argue both sides. But one of the issues was they did not want Don Richard testifying, they being Diddy's team. Why? Because they had done motion in limines to try to limit her testimony. So before her testimony, there was another argument related to Don Richard. So I want you guys, and this has to do with, essentially they were trying to use her testimony related to the trafficking. Y'all probably didn't even get that, right? That it was related to the trafficking. So I'm going to pull up the argument that went on about why the government did not want her testifying. If you guys noticed and paid attention to her testimony, if you notice with her testimony, you had where she did not even talk about, hold on, she did not even talk about everything in her lawsuit. Because in her lawsuit, Don Richard mentioned being in a car and abuse and some type of sexual type advancements. She alleged a lot of stuff, which would have perhaps fallen under a forced labor type situation. But apparently that was something that we will see that was already hashed out, that they weren't going to be able to use her to show that. So people keep asking, why the domestic violence? I told y'all a while ago on why I believe they are hammering in on the domestic violence. So we are going to pull that up. Thank you so much. You said perfect timing. Just got done cleaning and taking a break with the cold non-alcoholic beverage. Fine 9JA, you so saved and so responsible. Non-alcoholic A, that's what's up. So yeah, y'all make sure you hit the like button. Greetings. I know you guys are I was just doing my little intro because we gonna go over some law today. Okay, we are going back to figure out what are we even looking for here, because apparently it got lost in the sauce on what we're actually looking for. We get so caught up. We going back to the PAM University. All right, we get so caught up in the salaciousness of everything that I think we just forget that we can stay focused. And one of the things I told you all is I said, well, I'm going to wait for some jury instructions, because with the jury instructions, they'll tell you the elements on what has to be proven and beyond a reasonable doubt, each element, not just one, it has to be each element beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I did pull up a few jury instructions, because the reason why I was trying to wait is because that is the charging instructions are also another, I don't want to say argument, but it is kind of like something that we go back and forth on. We may object to certain instructions being given to the jury. There's also case law sometimes of which you can ask for a special jury instruction that may not be within the jury instructions, because somehow, like maybe it went to the Court of Appeals and we want the jury to be able to understand it's not your commonplace definition. It may be some legal special definition, and we want to make sure you know what that means when they use the specific word. So just because I pull up a federal jury instruction does not mean that's going to be the exact one used. Now, some of them are just your commonplace that they're going to use regardless with certain instructions, but other ones we argue back and forth, or we try to remove certain aspects. Like we're trying to get it as best as we can on both sides for our clients or whatnot. So I'm going to we're going to go over Don Richard and the argument as to why they did not want her to testify. Thank you so much, Caramel Q2, for the super chat. You said great time, and I just got home from an Orlando, Florida family trip. That sounds good and fun. Man, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you, wonderful. I appreciate that. All right, let's pull up. So this is the transcript when Agnifilo was arguing about Don Richard. So he basically says, Your Honor, it might not end up being a problem because we have a witness before this, but the witness after this one is someone named Don Richard. And the parties have a strong difference of opinion on the scope of Your Honor's order precluding large amounts of this particular witness's testimony. It might not be a problem because I don't know that we're going to get to Don Richard today or not, but I don't want to start the break without putting this on the court's radar screen. If the court remembers, I believe this witness was cited in the government's last enterprise letter, and we objected that the letter was too late in time, and we asked the court to preclude this witness's testimony concerning what essentially, and the court said, forced labor. So, remember, forced labor is one of the predicate acts that is in the indictment. So the judge remembers there was an issue where they were going to preclude her, which means when she was making all of these accusations of her work condition and different things like that, she was not going to be able to testify to that. So then he says, Agnifilo responds, yes, forced labor. But the important part is the way it was phrased in Your Honor's order. Your Honor was referring to the government's enterprise letter of April 20th, 2025. And what Your Honor stated in the order, and maybe over the break we can find the transcript, is Your Honor said that everything under what was sort of paragraph 5 of the letter, if the court remembers it, it may or may not was broken into different sections. And there's one section 5, and the court said everything in section 5 is off limits. And we have a differences of opinion as to essentially what Your Honor intended by your order, and as a result, what is going to be part of the witness's testimony. So they were arguing on what she would actually be able to testify to. So then the court says, well, what's the difference of opinion? Mr. Agnifilo says, I'm taking Your Honor's order at face value, and number 5 has 4 subsections in it, and I believe the order on its face says that all of the 4 subsections of number 5 are off limits. And so the court's like, yes, that's consistent with my recollection. He's like, yeah, let me hear the response. So this is Ms. Comey, who is for the government, that responds and says, if I may, this is referring to the April 25th, 2025 transcript. Your Honor's ruling was at page 45, lines 19 through 24. You said the court will exclude the evidence in items 5. The other remaining evidence is not excluded. Then later on page 51, lines 1 through 8, Ms. Johnson said, I just want to make sure I understand that the court's ruling is that the government can't argue forced labor as to employee number 4. That's Ms. Richard. But employee number 4 is an individual who has been on the government's witness list for other testimony. And we still intend to call her. And I understand that the court's ruling on this would not preclude our calling her. And Your Honor said that's correct. So basically, they say that she was on the witness list. And so when it comes to maybe the RICO conspiracy, we're not going to be able to use that for that purpose, but we're going to call her for another purpose. What is that purpose? We'll get into that in a minute. So then she says, this is Ms. Comey, I think the dispute is that, Your Honor, some of the testimony that we had already been planning to introduce from Ms. Richard to prove up the enterprise acts in our February 1st letter and to prove up the trafficking charged in count 2 with respect to Ms. Ventura overlapped with some of the proof that we would have used had Your Honor allowed us to argue that Ms. Richard was a victim of forced labor. And in particular, it's that she observed violence. She observed Mr. Combs being violent with Ms. Ventura. So then we would have argued, had we been permitted, that some of her observations of him being violent was coercive as to her. We will not be making that argument because we understand Your Honor's ruling, but we believe her witnessing Mr. Combs be violent to Ms. Ventura is still admissible under our February 1st enterprise letter, which notified the defense that we will be proving trafficking in part through violence to Ms. Ventura and to prove up count 2. So count 2 is the trafficking. And they're using the domestic violence to basically pull in the coercive nature that has to be proven. Because as you know, Diddy's team, or Mr. Combs, I should say, they are arguing it was all consensual. So when you look at, like, for instance, if you're a member, we had a membership meeting last night over in the membership, go be a member if you're not. But we went over a letter that was filed by Sean Combs' team on Saturday, where they're trying to strike their expert. Why are they trying to strike their expert? Because the expert was basically alluding to, she was precluded from saying, trying to intertwine the coerciveness with domestic violence. Like, she can't use coercive control and all of that. That was limited. And what it looked like she did is what Combs' team is arguing is, what she did was she would get a question from the government and then respond in a way that made it sound like you don't really have a choice. You do things in order to please your partner. And I told you guys, I'm like, it's like they're trying to say, even though she was in a DV relationship, she couldn't have consented to the actual nature because she was the victim of DV, and that equates to coercive. So that's how they're kind of trying to intertwine. So everybody's like, what do DV got to do with it? What do DV got to do with it? It's because they are the government is basically trying to say, intertwine DV as being a part of the coerciveness when it comes to ex trafficking. So if you pull up the ex trafficking statute, thank you, Queen Brielle, for gifting 10 memberships. That is so kind of you on this good Memorial Day. So if you pull up like the sex trafficking statute, let me see. It has by force, fraud, or coercion. So whoever knowingly in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce, that's why they try to say, you went to New York, you went to Miami. How many different states were you in? Because it's affecting interstate or foreign commerce, or within the special maritime and territory jurisdiction of the United States, recruits, entices, harbors, transports, provides, obtains, advertises, maintains, patronizes, or solicits by any means a person, or benefits financially or by receiving anything of value from participation in a venture which has engaged in or acted in these violations. That is what they have to prove for ex trafficking. And it does say of children, but it has or by force, fraud, or coercion. So this is the force, fraud, or coercion. So I'm gonna pull up the ninth. I think it's the Ninth Circuit's. The Ninth Circuit's jury instruction. So trafficking. So this is like an example of what the jury will get. The defendant is charged in count 2 of the indictment with engaging in ex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion in violation of Section 1591 of Title 18 of the United States Code. For the defendant to be found guilty of that charge, the government must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transport, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, or solicited a person. Second, the defendant knew or was in reckless disregard of the fact that force, threats of force, fraud, coercion, or any combination would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial X act. And third, the defendant's acts were in affecting interstate or foreign commerce within the special maritime territory jurisdiction of the United States. So that's basically an example of what the jury instruction will be. So you have to prove, they're saying it's consent, and they're going to say it's by coercion, force, or fraud. So when you talk about this whole having these freak offs, they have to try to prove that somehow she was coerced to do it. And that's why you got the testimony that came out, of which the defense was continuously pulling out stuff of her initiating it, her saying, I'm always down for a freak off, things that didn't show that she was coerced in any way. And that's the trafficking charge. And they were actually going to use the skillet, even though what Westmoreland did, honestly, was she just showed the jury, you can't really believe nothing this lady says, because she was basically prepped. She's added to the story, like, what is her purpose? Just kind of going more for credibility, even though it seemed like she was dismantling the whole whether this incident happened, because we all know he DV was something that happened. I don't think that's anything that can be refuted. They have to focus on showing that it wasn't based on fraud, coercion, or force. That's what they're trying to do. So there you go. So that is the trafficking. So now you have to pay attention. Are they showing that it was any type of coercion or that even affected commerce? M. Max said, no disrespect to Cassie, but Beyonce has been solo since 2002 and she only has 8 albums. Giving Cassie a 10 deal was the beginning of the control and manipulation. That's from M. Mac. Pam, are you saying if I get flued out, I can send this to Tracy? You can, if you get paid. If they paying for that hotel room and they paying for it, and you feel forced or coerced, that may be trafficking. You got to be careful. Got to be careful out here. Because when you actually pull up the indictment, let me see if I had that. Indictment. Let's see. We'll pull up what the indictment actually says. So when you pull up the indictment, it actually has for trafficking from at least and or about 2009 up to and including and or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. Sean Combs, the defendant, and in affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion as described in Title 18, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial act and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained victim 1, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 1 to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact of the victim was engaging in commercial acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. So they have to show coercion as it pertains to Cassie, because when we look at these workers, they're not saying they was forced to do anything. So I assume Jane Doe, who is supposed to testify, I guess, soon, maybe this week, may try to do. So all of this, their arguments is all of this was consent. Pink Goddess said, Pam, I'm 1L student. I worry the jury will not. Well, the RICO and RICO conspiracy is actually kind of, it's not as easy to dice. First of all, RICO is not easy within itself. And then when you say racketeering conspiracy, I can see people that are in the profession that have not seen that says racketeering conspiracy. And so I told you all, when we went over the racketeering conspiracy, which had the enterprise and all of that we went over, and I probably mixed it up because I was trying to do it off the top of my head. Those 5 elements are not what you have to prove for racketeering conspiracy. I told you all, you have to prove 3 elements. think it's 3 for racketeering, and it has to be an agreement. And it's obviously easier for them to try to prove that than they would, So then, let me see if there's anything. Hold on. If there's anything else on here. And similarly, this is Miss Comey still talking about the issue with Don Richard and her testimony. And similarly, we expect Miss Richard would testify that she observed Mr. Combs and his security in possession of GUNs, that she observed Mr. Combs in possession of and distributing DRUGS, and that Mr. Combs and others, at least one other employee of one of his companies, threatened Miss Richard to keep her silent about the violence and the other crimes that she observed. So they're trying to show like different natures of obviously how he is, allegedly. All of that we think falls comfortably within our enterprise letter, which preview those types of acts as they had way the enterprise and why the enterprise operated. So all of that, her saying keep silent, there were drugs and all this is supposed to be a part of the enterprise letter, which shows how the enterprise operated and what they're going to allege. These people are going to testify how the enterprise worked. Had Your Honor permitted us to, we would have also argued that this is evidence of forced labor. We will not be making those arguments, and we will also not be introducing any evidence on direct examination of Ms. Richard's own experience of violence or coercion at the hands of Mr. Combs, because we understand that would only be relevant as to forced labor. So it wasn't about her experience personally. So none of this would have helped her lawsuit because she's saying about stuff personally. It was what she observed with Cassie to help them with count 2, which is trafficking. And then the way she's seen his alleged violence and all of that stuff would help with the enterprise on the means and the manner on how they operated the enterprise. So that was the purpose of her testimony. So there was an issue because the judge got mad, like you should have brought this up a long time ago. So the court said, what I understand Ms. Comey is saying is that taking the Wayback Machine to the hearing that we are talking about, I was told that there were portions of the new enterprise letter that related to existing parts of the case that were reflected in the earlier enterprise letter or that were part of the indicted and the charge acts. As to those pieces of the final enterprise letter, the court said that's fair game because it was in either the prior enterprise letter or it was in the indictment. So there was no concern with the late disclosure. So basically, it sounds like they weren't allowing the forced labor aspect because they disclosed it too late, that they were going to add that as part of her testimony. However, when you look at the indictment, they talk about forced labor and all of that, but I guess they didn't name who it was. But anything that was already previously disclosed in a timely manner, or that was in the indictment, that's fair game. So yeah. So that's what they was arguing over, for those of you that was wondering. Why didn't they want her to testify? So those it's like, what do domestic violence? And it is. It's too late for a DV state law case. It is. Probably that would have been the clearest day on the video. He probably would have been pleading. Like he pled, I guess, when he was accused of hitting a producer or whoever at the record company. So yeah. So yeah, that's that. So let's pull up. Y'all gonna be like, girl. Racketeering conspiracy. Now you have again regular racketeering, and I think we went over. I guess we could. Let me see. See if I could find it. on, y'all. Are you guys hitting that like button? Please make sure you hit the like button. Thank you so much. RICO conspiracy. Let me see if I can find something in my little archives for that. Let's see. So this is a jury instruction. You know what? I'm going to go back to RICO because this is what everybody is thinking. But you guys see. So this is the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization. So this is how it would have been if it was a RICO. But I'm saying it's RICO conspiracy. So it will say count one of the indictment charges defendant. It would have said Sean Combs with violating the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act, also known as RICO. Under this statute, it is a federal crime for any person who is employed by or associated with an enterprise that is engaged in or affects interstate or foreign commerce to conduct or to participate in the conduct of the affairs of that enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. In order to find a defendant guilty, you must find the government proved each of the following 5 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, the existence of an enterprise. Second, that the enterprise was engaged in or its activities affected interstate or foreign commerce. Third, that the defendant was employed by or associated with the enterprise. Fourth, that the defendant knowingly conducted that enterprise's affairs, or that the defendant knowingly participated directly or indirectly in the conduct of that enterprise, and that the defendant knowingly, and they do all this different conduct, directly or indirectly, which is the pattern of racketeering, as alleged in the indictment. And then they explain each element. That's how it would go. So you would know that what the enterprise is defined as. The first element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt for the offense charged in count 1 is the existence of an enterprise, as alleged in the indictment. Enterprise may be 1, a legal entity such as a corporation or partnership, and 2, a group of individuals associated in fact, although not a legal entity. It's very interesting because a lot of this stuff is laid out in the indictment as if it's just a regular RICO claim. However, it's not. It's a RICO conspiracy, and there actually is instructions for RICO conspiracy, and you'll be able to see what the difference is. It's easier to prove, but you do have to show that there is an agreement. So let's see. RICO conspiracy. This is the elements of the offense. So we would say count 1 of the indictment charges Sean Combs agreed or conspired with 1 or more other person to conduct or to participate in the conduct of an enterprise's affair through a pattern of racketeering activity. As I have explained to you, it is a federal crime for 2 or more persons to agree or conspire to commit any offense against the United States, even if they never actually achieve their objective. A conspiracy is a kind of criminal partnership. In order for you to find Sean Combs guilty of conspiracy to conduct or to participate in the conduct of an enterprise's affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity, you must find the government proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following 3 elements. First, that 2 or more persons agreed to conduct or to participate directly or indirectly in the conduct of an enterprise's affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity. That's kind of the problem I'm having with this case right now. Second, that Sean Combs was a party to or member of that agreement. And third, that Sean Combs joined the agreement or conspiracy knowing of its objective to conduct or participate directly or indirectly in the conduct of an enterprise's affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity. You see how convoluted this is, and you're a freaking juror? And intending to join together with at least 1 other alleged conspirator to achieve that objective. That is, that Sean Combs and at least 1 other alleged conspirator shared a unity of purpose and the intent to achieve the objective of conducting or participating in the conduct of an enterprise affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity. My issue with this, I said with the trafficking, was that you had a lot of these associates who had no, like his assistants were setting up rooms. Every time he went, he had a bag. Every time he went, he was not necessarily engaging in trafficking, and the people had no clue. They said they had no clue, allegedly, of what was happening. These assistants did, even though, you know, some of them got immunity and stuff. But they were at least saying that. But I'm sure they got immunity because they were saying they went and got drugs and all this other stuff in their name. So it would have to be like, it has to be an agreement. So then my mind went to, well, are they trying to say like Cassie is a victim and perhaps a part of it at the same time? But it's very hard to say somebody coerced you if they were in agreement to commit a crime. So that seems a little hard to do as well. So this is what they do have to prove. That's the third, that they joined together knowing it's objective to conduct or participate directly or indirectly in the conduct of an enterprise affair through a pattern racketeering. Okay, the meanings of the elements enterprise, employed by or associated with conduct or participate directly or indirectly in the conduct of that enterprise affair and through a pattern of racketeering activity are the same as I have just explained to you with respect to the RICO offense. So whoever this was, they got charged with RICO and RICO conspiracy. So we ain't got one, we gonna get you on the second one. However, the RICO conspiracy charge is a distinct offense from the RICO offense charged. There are several important differences. So these are the differences between a RICO and RICO conspiracy, which Sean Combs is the RICO conspiracy. One important difference is that unlike the requirement to find Sean Combs guilty of the RICO offense charged in count whatever, in order to find him guilty of the RICO conspiracy, the government is not required to prove that the alleged enterprise actually existed, or that the enterprise actually engaged in, or its activities actually affected interstate or foreign commerce. So they put all that in the indictment, but really they don't technically have to prove it, I guess. Rather, because an agreement to commit a RICO offense is the essence of a RICO conspiracy, the government need only prove that the defendant joined the conspiracy, and that if the object of the conspiracy was achieved, the enterprise would be established and the enterprise would be engaged in, or its activities would affect interstate or foreign commerce. Similarly, unlike the requirement to find them guilty of the RICO offense, to be guilty of the RICO conspiracy, the government is not required to prove that the defendant was actually employed by or associated with the enterprise, or that the defendant agreed to be employed by or be associated with the enterprise. Nor does the RICO conspiracy charge require the government to prove that the defendant personally participated in that operation or management of the enterprise, or agreed to personally participate in the operation or management of the enterprise. Rather, you may find the defendant guilty of the RICO conspiracy offense if the evidence established that the defendant knowingly agreed to facilitate or further a scheme which, if completed, would constitute a RICO violation involving at least one other conspirator who would be employed by or associated with the enterprise and who will participate in the operation or management of the enterprise. Finally, in order to find the defendant guilty of RICO conspiracy charged in the count, the government is not required to prove that the defendant personally committed or agreed to personally commit any act of racketeering activity. So that's why they would bring in somebody else may have allegedly blown up Kid Cudi's car. You could have directed somebody else to do it. Indeed, it is not necessary for you to find that the objective or purpose of the conspiracy was achieved at all. It could have been an attempt. However, the evidence must establish that the defendant knowingly agreed to facilitate or further a scheme which, if completed, would include a pattern of racketeering activity committed by at least one other conspirator. In short, to find the defendant guilty of the RICO conspiracy charge in the count of the indictment, you must find the government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Sean Combs joined in an agreement or conspiracy with another person or person, knowing that the objective or purpose was to conduct or to participate directly or indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity and intending to join with the other person or persons to achieve the objective. And Max said, yeah, he probably forced Capricorn to throw that's where the female I don't listen. He's saying, wasn't me. I ain't had nothing to do with that. But the thing is, they're saying all of this stuff. I think what they're trying to connect is that all of this stuff was to protect his asset, maybe in the prostitution and the trafficking, because that would be what the crime is, right? That you're you basically what the indictment alleges is that he would lure women in under the guise of a romantic relationship. So what they're trying to prove is what the defense is saying is these were relationships and that's it. And all this is a jealous boyfriend. Did they prove he was jealous? Yeah. And all of the stuff they've shown so far does look like he was just a jealous dude that committed domestic violence, which is not the same as trafficking and all of that and RICO conspiracy. But what the government is trying to show is that almost like his intent when he gets with these girls, especially Cassie, wasn't even really in to be in no romantic relationship. The point was to get with them so they can engage in these acts. They can engage in trafficking. I'm just going to make it seem like I want to be with you. And for those of you that follow me on the Shirley Strawberry case with Ernest Williams, one of the things alleged in his indictment is they're saying he used women under the guise of a romantic relationship and used that to get to their credit cards, to get to their financial stuff, to steal from them, to commit all these different fraudulent acts. But he really didn't want to be with them. He married Shirley Strawberry, it's alleged. This is all the allegations in the indictment, because they're saying he wanted to be in circles so he could meet more prominent people with more money to do the same thing. So I don't know. The thing is, Cassie testified that she believed he loved her. That's why that was important fact. And that she loved him. He even later did a whole soliloquy in 2020, said he loved her. She was his ride or die. But they're trying to almost make it seem, and we can pull up the indictment. Y'all ain't got to take my word for it. They say a lot of this was just a facade to have. So when you look, let's see, let me go back up. As you guys see, count 1, racketeering conspiracy, right? And I'm going to just read the actual indictment because it's been so long. The defendant abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees' resources and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other things, and other crimes, trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. So basically, he engaged in these different conduct with these women who they're saying was his girlfriends. And then he used that's why you had associates testify to say, I set up the rooms. I seen them hit her, but I ain't say nothing. I ain't do nothing. Or people that said, I didn't say anything because I was scared. Or like Don Richard saying, well, he said that if I said something, then it would be a problem. So that's quote concealing. Then you had other people that I guess they're alleging arson, even if he didn't do it himself, alleging part of that was to keep people under control so that they would be too scared to leave this trafficking that he had going on. So then they say the defendant operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and LA under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, and Combs Global. Corporate entities in the Combs businesses include, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a TV network and media company. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in orchestrated performances of sexual activity with Combs, and at times with Combs and male commercial ex-workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial ex-workers to fly to Combs' location. So now we're talking about crossing state lines. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Physical abuse. So then they say the defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009. So they start this abuse part with Cassie, and continuing for years, Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. And then they go on to the occasion of the video where he threw a vase at her. And then he paid somebody allegedly a member of the bribery, right? When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and they were talking about the hotel video, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. The man with the video basically testified that he offered him money. He didn't take the money, but he videotaped it, from the hotel. Subsequently, Combs, with the assistance of several close associates, paid hotel security staff $100,000 for the hotel surveillance footage of the assault. So his associates came in, and they're the ones that paid him. So basically, they're trying to say he covered up the abuse that he did these women who he was ex-trafficking off of a freak off. So then they say the defendant used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his acts of violence, abuse, and commercial acts. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors and others close associated, acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. So this is the enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, ex-trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. So obstruction of justice is when you're paying somebody to get rid of a video, allegedly. I don't know if they proved that, the guy just testified that he went the next day and the video was gone. So I don't know if they're going to bring somebody to say, yep, I got the $100K and I'm the one that took the video. I don't know. But the guy said he didn't take the money, the one that actually had the videos and was showing his wife. The arson, of course, we know that's connected to Kid Cudi. Kidnapping can be a couple of different ways that they can try to say it was kidnapping. I know with Dawn Richard, she alleges in her lawsuit that she was in a car and perhaps maybe and that there were no knobs or door handles to get out. And she was in there for a couple of hours. Maybe that's what they were trying to say, but apparently she could not testify to that because it was some late late disclosures or whatever the reason the court came up with. Prostitution, I think that's self-explanatory with the people that came on the stand. All right. So then they talk about who the businesses are. So the Combs Enterprise constitutes an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objective of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in Southern District of New York. As you guys seen, you don't even have to prove some of this stuff. So the fact that they put it in here was very interesting. I think they just wanted to be, I don't know. They know we all was about to read this. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of his security staff, household staff, which would be his assistants, personal assistants, high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. Purposes of the enterprise. The purpose of Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business and marketing agency, and television network and media company, preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry. Enriching members and associates of the enterprise included its leader, Combs, and in particular, those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of Combs Enterprise, including the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats and violence, coercion, verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Fulfilling the purpose and desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotic distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. Securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs Enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats, and protecting the Combs Enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates. The means and methods. The defendant and the members and associates conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of Combs Enterprise, including Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure, L-U-R-E, female victims into Combs' orbits, even under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims, including but not limited to 3 victims, to engage in commercial X acts. In connection with the commercial X acts, Combs provided the victims with, among other things, monetary payments, career opportunities, and payments of rent and housing expenses. I guess my issue right here would be she was his girlfriend, and it seems like he paid for Kim's housing. He's paid for the women that he was with and paid for their housing. So they're almost saying, as you see in sub A, Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure, like they helped him. So when you get testimony such as Christina Courtroom called you, Cassie, wondering where you were at after there was an abuse, then it looks like you helped them out when this abuse happened. So this is why that type of testimony comes in. So then sub B says, some of the commercial sex acts involved male commercial sex workers and were referred to by Combs as, among other things, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. But the thing is, Cassie has also testified that she called, she arranged, she did all of that. So they're trying to prove because of the DV, she really ain't mean it. When she was saying she wanted it, she really ain't mean it. When she was saying she want the free, she always down for a freak off. They're blaming him for all of this, that he's the one that basically arranged all of this, and his people in his orbit, they helped him to conceal these sexual fantasies that he has, and he would lure women that were beautiful into perhaps the record label and say, listen, I'm going to make you a star, and then turn you into this worker, basically doing things that you really don't want to do. That's what they're trying to connect. Of course, the defense is like, these are relationships. How are you turning a relationship into sex trafficking? Yes, he may be freakier than the next. He had a drug problem. She had a drug problem to the point where even asked, it wasn't that he was giving her drugs. She was getting drugs herself. She was taking it herself. And she took it on her own after they had already set up for the freak offs to happen. So how are you saying they're ingesting her and controlling her with the drugs? So this is why you get the testimony from the defense to try to counteract some of these allegations. So in arranging these freak offs, Combs, with the assistance of other members and associates of the enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial ex workers across state lines and internationally. So that's why you get all this testimony of, have you been to New York? Have you been to Miami? Have you been here? Because there has to be some evidence of crossing state lines. The thing is, I know there was one of them that said they were from New York. It might have been the Punisher guy. He was from New York, and he only did the stuff in New York. So of course they're arguing that in different states, perhaps there was a corporation, of course, that did the escort. Some people were asking questions like, why would you do Craigslist? Well, Craigslist is local. Is that considered crossing state lines if it's local and they're getting people on Craigslist in their area? So that may be why they chose Craigslist in certain occasions, so they wouldn't be crossing state lines. But nonetheless, freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial ex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Well, we know from the testimony, again, that she took her own drugs and she would call herself. So she wasn't always distributing it to them. So that's where they're getting the distribution part from. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in acts with commercial ex workers. So we know Cassie was aware that they were recorded, because some of the stuff, if he didn't have his device, he put it on her phone. Plus, we know there were 3 devices that were taken from Cassie. One was broken, one had a factory reset, and one was, and we talked about that in the membership, that was part of the transcript. One was factory reset, one was broken, and one, nothing was wrong with it. Those are where they downloaded some of this. And the one of the ones that had the factory defect, I believe, was actually in the name of Frank Black. So we can assume that it was Diddy's computer that she had. She had that in her possession. And so she gave consent for them to go through her computers, but they could not give consent for the Frank Black computer. Why? Because they knew it probably was not hers. So they had to get a search warrant to try to go through that. So she had in her possession one of the laptops that was Diddy's, that I guess allegedly had some of these videos or whatever. I don't know what was on there. Okay. So that was actually in one of the testimonies from Thursday that we went over in the membership. If you're not a member, you should go join. So Cinnamon said, didn't Cassie testify that she wanted the drugs so that she was distant from what was happening? If she wanted to enjoy freak offs, why does she need drugs to take her mind anywhere else? Well, there are people that drink before they do it. That don't mean that they don't. So I guess the thing is, I guess the point of it all, and I see what you're saying, that she wouldn't have took drugs to separate herself from it if she really wanted. So the fact she used it to separate herself must show that she didn't want it. So what you're saying is Sean Combs was supposed to read her mind that she didn't want it. That's what you're basically saying. Because in the text messages, she's the one setting it up or saying she's down for it or that's what she wants to do. So how is he supposed to know that, oh, she's only taking drugs? She was taking drugs outside of him. So if she did that to disconnect herself, she also took drugs when they weren't even doing the freak off. Because there was testimony that he sent word out to all the dealers in LA, do not serve her. There's testimony that allegedly the argument, according to Cassie, even though her ex-best friend testified differently, that the reason why he hit her with a hanger is because he came over there and I guess he seen they were doing drugs and there were drugs on the table. So he was like coming after her and trying to fight her when she was doing drugs outside of this. So she had her own habit as well. JL, apparently he was supposed to, I guess. I'm just asking. So, yeah. Did she use drugs before him? That's a great question. I think I don't know if she ever done it before. Again, the best friend mentioned weed. Because I think they asked her, somebody mentioned weed. I think it was her. I don't know. I have to look back. I don't know if that question ever came up. And the thing is, that's the government's witnesses. And they probably wouldn't put somebody on there like that. But we'll see what the defense does when they put on their case. So we'll see. Raynette said Diddy should regret the things he did. I'm sure he does, because it has these type of consequences where you're under the government radar and now you fighting for your life, literally. Because Diddy wants her to rely on him for the drugs after he got her addicted to drugs. That's another form of dependency. That's a speculation, because again, we don't know. We don't know if she ever had done it before. That's the first thing. So that's a leap. And you're saying he just wanted her to do it. Sometimes, and I said this before, there's a lot of bad drugs on the street. So you have people that lace drugs. And so I remember being in high school and my friend's mom let them smoke weed at home with her. And I couldn't wrap my mind around it because my mama would never. But the point was, at least I know what she's smoking and she's at home. So it could be that as well. It could have been like, they've been and had you out here. Or also it could have been Diddy ain't want nobody to know he was with somebody that was doing drugs, because then it may fall back on him that it could be an assumption. He may not have really cared for real if she did drugs or not. I don't know. It could have been that they know that that's my girl and she on the red carpet and now she out here doing drugs. It's so many different explanations as to why. But the point is, because there's so many different explanations, that's what reasonable doubt is. Zeta said, he said, call me when you're ready to do the things I want. JL said, y'all got to stop adding assumptions to the case. Assumptions aren't facts in the court of law. Where everybody, you can't stop it, JL. You can't stop it. Keontae said, I was allowed to drink at home in high school. There's a lot of people like that, because you rather know what your kids aren't doing. And some people, that is their mantra and it's not unheard of. So that could be a reason. I don't know. There's a plethora of reasons. None of us know what it is. But yeah, and I was going to say that too. Remember y'all was dragging Bobby Brown out here? Y'all remember that? Y'all was dragging Bobby. And then it turned out Whitney was the one, because she was the pop princess, why everybody thought it was that. So Brown mama said, what if Cassie was a Whitney and got Diddy hooked on drugs? Everyone blamed Bobby Brown, but it was Whitney. I don't know. It's all the last child. None of us was there. We're all speculating. Cinnamon and Say said, I understand that, but wasn't there testimony that Diddy didn't want her on a specific drug? He wanted her to be clean, and she said she needed the drug so that she could disassociate from the freak-offs. No, Diddy actually didn't want to do drugs at all. There is one point where he told her he didn't want to do drugs at all, because his point was he can't remember. The point of it is you're trying to enjoy the moment. But if you're super high, you're not enjoying every moment and feeling it. So there were actually text messages where he told her he did not want to use drugs. So if he didn't want to use drugs, how do you say he was ingesting her with it? So there's that. That's why I said a lot of the facts, again, people are going to report what's clickbait. Everybody don't see what you're talking about and be interested because they want you to say like extortion for $20,000. It took me to find out later that he gave the $20,000 back. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where the headlines go. So this is why I want to reel y'all back in. We're on the Diddy eve of tomorrow's trial with Capricorn. Reel you back in. Go over what's in the indictment and what actually has to be charged. What has to be proven, I'm sorry. And I think it's important because we do get caught up. People are emotional. They are not robots where you plug yourself in. The thing is, a lot of lawyers, we've been trained to let our emotion go to the side and stick to the elements. Now, the difficult part is, do we get a jury of our peers that don't do this, that can pull their emotions to the side and say, who did he agree with? These sound like relationship issues. Or if somebody comes in, they can say, yep, there we got it. That's the agreement. That's what it is. Or with the trafficking, where's the coercion? Or do they say they equate because they disallow the domestic violence person to use the word coercion and try to be able to prove coercion through the DV expert? That was something that was disallowed. Cannot say that it was a level of coercion. And so the issue was, it appeared during her testimony, and this is why the defense moved to strike them, filed a letter on yesterday, Saturday, trying to strike the expert. Why? Because they felt like the expert went beyond the bounds and kind of inferred a lot of things where you can infer coercion, which was against whatever rulings that the court had already made. Starfish said when the abused men start testifying, some people will be quiet. Well, if they do, there's not an abused man victim in here, though, that we know of. We know there are 3 victims. We've seen the indictment, right? 3. One is Cassie, one is Jane Doe, and one is a person that has disappeared, I guess, and they're not coming. So I'm not sure. And again, the government had a lot of picks and choosings. Why? Because of all these lawsuits. And these are the people that they chose to focus on. The women that I guess had relationships with them. Perhaps maybe because they would have to, it's difficult because a lot of these lawsuits, they're actually alleging RAPE. And it has to be a he said, she said with really nothing corroborating it. And one thing the government likes to do that you'll see is they like to overly corroborate their stuff. So like they had the manager from the hotel room testify. We went over that in the membership, and he testified he was under these names at this hotel between this time. We had some notes on there where it was wax everywhere and oil all over the place. So we charged the extra $1,000. So they're going to corroborate their corroboration. So if somebody said we were like Cassie testified, the candles, and people will look like, is that really important? Basically, it was important because they had a way to corroborate what she was saying, which would bolster her credibility on the stand. So you have burning candles, and she said it was wax poured on them or whatnot. And then we have the manager saying they were at this hotel. It was under his name. We know it's Sean Combs. He changed names to all these different names. Frank Black, Frank White. It was different names under there. They had 3 different people, including Christina Courtroom. You're not to charge the room until you talk to them. So that's where they're getting the employees being involved, because they're the ones basically getting the rooms for him and he's staying there. Now it's whether they had knowledge that he was actually doing these freak offs. That's what the thing is, that it has to be an agreement. So them as assistants were doing that. But again, there were notes on there about damage to the room or deep cleaning, and we had to charge an extra 1,000, extra 500. So they corroborate every little piece that doesn't seem important to the public, but it makes a jury think, okay, they got 3 different instances, so we gonna believe the entire testimony because this and this matched up. So they usually, if they got a cell phone, they're gonna have your cell phone. They're gonna have what's in the cell phone from downloads, screenshots of your text, pings. Then they got some other software, like they'll have 5 different ways to show where you were at. Okay, that's how they do. JL said Cassie said no one knew. Yes, she did. That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you say a conspiracy when nobody knew about it? That's as it relates to her. Now, we don't know Jane Doe. We don't know what she got to say. I mean, I don't know. So let me see. Let me go back to this indictment right quick. But we don't know this is just the beginning of the testimony. So they got what, like 3 more weeks left, I think they said. They acknowledged that they should be done with this trial before July 4th. So we at least got the entire month of June. And the government, the defense said they're going to have a week that they have to do to put on their case. So they say, let me go back. Members of the associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms. So we had the person that came on that said they were booked by these people for the freak-off, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies. We know that them assistants came on there. That was their purpose, including controlled substances. We know there was an assistant that said they've gotten drugs that were prescription drugs and got them in their name. They've gotten other drugs from One Stop. Remember One Stop? You can get you from vitamin C to birth control, okay, and everything in between. Baby oil, lubricants, those were all in the bag, the Louis bag that he had. Extra linens and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs. There were people that said they've cleaned it off to try to mitigate room damage, arranging for travel for victims. So I guess if they booked flights for Cassie to come, because she was but she was his girlfriend, so I don't know. Commercial sex workers, saying they booked for commercial sex workers as well. And Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with requested supplies. So remember, there was testimony from one of the assistants. Did he ever call you to come back to the room? So this is what they're trying to piece together, everything they say in the indictment. So they're saying, did he call you to come back? Yeah, but they said he called for food sometimes. So that was a little bust. Like, it didn't do what it was, didn't give what I think the government was trying to get it to give. Delivering large sums of cash to Combs. Remember, there was testimony about going to Western Union to pay the commercial sex workers. However, I don't think they knew what it was for. They just may have asked him. He said sometimes he asked for cash and he dropped it off to him. So I guess that was the point of that testimony. And scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residence in Miami, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Everybody was like, why we care about the baby oil? What that have to do with anything? Well, that's what they're alleging. The associates in this enterprise, in this whole RICO conspiracy, they were supplying him baby oil for the freak-off. So that's why the thousands of baby oil was important, because it shows who needs 1,000 bottles unless they doing this all the time. Unless you got some big organization of which you are doing these freak-offs, who the hell need that much oil? Now, it was debunked that the oil had drugs in it. That was going around the internet. That was in somebody's lawsuit. They tried to allege the oil was on them, and then all of a sudden they just felt limp, That was, I think, one of the ones with the whole Drewski case or whatever. So they all were, so they tried to say that was debunked. Cassie said there wasn't no, he just liked people to be glistening. That was his only reason. So that is the reason why, because they're saying this, the 1,000 bottles corroborates them talking about all of this baby oil that was being set up in these rooms. So, yes, I did see that they said they only found 26 bottles in court. I did hear that as well. Really, Zeta? All right, let's go on. Angie, please don't use all caps in my chat, please. Please don't. I've been very, very lenient on the all caps, but it feels like you're yelling at me. But I'm really going to say something because you got exclamation points at the end, which means you are. So I'm going to need you to relax. We all have differences of opinion. My job is to pique your mind and change you, and from what seems common, that the legalese of it all may be a little different. That's it. It ain't even that serious. Don't get your blood pressure up for people you don't know. We are not on the jury. What we think don't matter one way or another, sis. It really don't matter. We're just trying to evaluate and learn what the freak off of it all is. Okay, that's what we're doing over here. So I need y'all to just relax. Okay, it's okay. Right? Okay, it's the holiday. I'm just giving you content. So while some of you guys are barbecuing, smoking cigars, and drinking your coolers, I'm just trying to give you some content. That's it. So we can have a better understanding going into the week. I ain't trying to beef with you, sis. I ain't trying to argue with you. I'm just saying. So let's just bring it down 2 notches, bring the tones down. We can use lower caps and we can use a period. I see you got the period at the end, but that exclamation point, we need to take that out of there. All right, sis? Okay. Thank you so much, Angie. Apology accepted. It's okay. I want you to relax. I don't want you getting your blood pressure high. Okay? Okay? Just relax. Now, if you can't see or you got some type of eyesight issues, I can do that. But just don't put the exclamation point at the end, okay? I can rock with that. There's a couple people that's how it is. But I take grammar because I write so much. I take grammar very literally and seriously. So I'll literally read it and I'll just hear, rah, 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 rah. I'm like, relax, okay? TB Blake says exactly. Man, people been saying, if you ain't just on Cassie's side, I'm unfollowing you. Let me show you why this is abuse. Let me tell you the patterns. This is this and this and that. Anybody saying anything different, you from the devil, and we should never even listen to you again. It's like, relax. Y'all don't know these people. Cassie is over there in her master suite having her baby. She got a man. Some of y'all even got that. She over there in her master suite, $30 million richer, putting her feet up. Cause she ain't gotta work she ain't gotta get on there and dun 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 dun. She ain't gotta play that song another day in her life if she don't want to. She don't have to play that song ever in nobody's concert. She said she don't hate Sean Combs. My thing is, sis, if you like it and you ain't got no regret, she says she don't regret it. It was love during that time. So this is why I think that type of testimony was elicited on how did you feel about him? And how do you think he felt about you? And they said, you still love him, don't you? She was like, I have love for him from back then. I'm not sure I would answer that way. Okay. After all of that, I don't know if I would answer that way, but she did. And from that moment, I knew I can't be more mad than Cassie. So I need you not to be more mad than the person that went through it. Okay. That's all. That's all. This is why her husband was angry leaving. Well, he was angry too, allegedly, when he found out she was still sleeping with Diddy when they was dating. And allegedly, he punched a hole in the wall. But he knew what was up. I mean, he may have not known as deep and detailed because I'm sure some things she forgot, and the defense brought it up. I just can't see myself testify. It's some things you just take to the grave. To testify that somebody urinated in my mouth until I choked. So y'all can't tell me that this woman was not subpoenaed to testify, because I'm sure she did not want to. She had to. All right. So she didn't probably want to even go through all of this for him to go to prison. She got her cash. Just saying. Diddy had ecstasy pills with Obama face and MDMA in his eye drops up until the day he was caught. Ain't nobody got that man hooked on drugs but himself. That's from MRT. Well, you do know, because now I gotta be, when you say things like this, I just have to let you think. You do know that Cassie just said, right, that she just got off of drugs in 2023. An opiate. She's been away from Diddy since 2018. All right. So we're going, if we're gonna talk about what Diddy current status is, we gotta talk about her. And she is currently taking medication every day in order, you know how some people go to the meth clinic to get off of, other drugs. She takes pills every day in order to keep from suffering from, I guess, the effects of withdrawal. And she's been on that for the last few years. Okay. So now we got to say one side, and then we got to say the argument when you say that type of stuff. Okay. Some people get angry when it seems like things are not going their way. They think the trial should go. Pathetic and sickening, because most of them don't care about Cassie. They just hate Diddy. And I'm not a Diddy fan. Okay. Do I like some of the Diddy songs? I do. Do I like some of the Diddy artists? I do. But am I a Diddy fan? No. And let me tell you why. And y'all know why. I'm not going to say it. Y'all know, just put the word in the chat why I don't like Diddy. I learned from watching Diddy on television reality shows that he wields his power, in my opinion, because he knew there were people. Well, basically, he kind of showed there are people that are willing to do whatever to be on this show and whatever. And that's not just Diddy. That's a lot of people. Look at The Apprentice with Trump. People was trying not to be fired. That makes good TV. It does. I'm just saying, I would have got my cab and I would have took my cab to the airport. But that's just me. Everybody's not like that. They feel like everyone had to pay their dues and get their stripes to get where they are. Maybe this is me paying my dues by walking to get this darn cheesecake. Okay. So no, I'm coming from a place from the legal mind of, you have to, when you're going to take someone's freedom, you need to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's all. And everybody should want that. You know why? And the reason is, you don't want it to be someone in your family. And it's very interesting to me how no one cares about other people until it affects them. So we have a big issue with wrongful convictions or whatever around here. But since it's not your son, your dad, your daughter, your niece, whatever, nobody cares. But then I get people that blow my phone up because when it happens to them, but you didn't care about the next person, all of a sudden you care. I've represented people like that. They felt like everybody arrested did it. But then when they got accused of something, And they was like, "Pam, I promise you I ain't do nothing. They trying to set me up." And these be prestigious people or public figures or whatever. I'm supposed to believe you, but I ain't supposed to believe that they said they didn't do it. So now you see it happen to you. Now all of a sudden you want your due process. So regardless of whether you don't like people, I always want everybody to have their due process. If the government has the evidence it is alleging to basically convict him beyond a reasonable doubt of everything, it is what it is. But if they don't have it, he needs to go home. That's just it. Fair is fair. And it should be like that all the way around. Whether you're somebody who want to tell people to go get damn cheesecake because you can, or if it's somebody who ain't never committed a crime in their life and they the nicest person in the world. Everybody deserves due process. That's it. I'm glad you caught it too, TB Blazing BP. Hey, Dr. Jonathan, good to see you. You can know something, but in court, you need to be able to prove it. That's it. That's all. And see, the thing about the internet is a lot of stuff we see on the internet, the jury is not going to be able to consider. Y'all got to consider that. They're not going to be able to consider L.B. Short talking about, I think he had something to do with Kim's unaliving, even though her friend that came out and said it's a whole lot. They ain't had no relationship like that. He just started talking to her 2 months before her death. But nonetheless, which I kind of assumed. I was like, I don't think you was no deadbeat like that. And she was just kicking it with you over cocktails. But nonetheless, they're not going to be able to consider that. We know Don Richard's entire complaint, where she alleges a lot of stuff. They're not considering the alleged situations that she's alleging up in that complaint. They're not considering a lot of stuff. What is evidence is what is shown on that stand. That's it. So we know half of what Don said in her complaint because she already testified. That ain't coming in. L.B. Short says he was subpoenaed, but I mean, we don't know. People thought Aubrey was subpoenaed, but apparently she wasn't. Verna Tate said, understanding the mental, emotional, physical, and psychological abuse and the damage it does to a person is essential before blaming the victim. Who is blaming the victim? Because certainly you can't mean because we say, or I say, he's entitled to due process and he needs to be found on every element guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that somebody is blaming the victim. She testified as to what she testified to, and she's had years of therapy. She testified they were in a relationship. She testified, this is an evidence, this ain't Pam. She testified she initiated some of the freak offs. She just said initially she wanted to do it. And then after a while, she ain't want to do it no more for real. She was just doing it because she ain't want to see him do it with nobody else. That's what she said. So some of you guys are projecting your own situations and experiences on this. She's at peace and she don't hate him, but y'all hate him. Like, help me out. That's all I'm saying. Post City 99 said, I think that they are trying to drain dealers' pockets. Well, I wonder what everyone would be saying if Cassie didn't go first. Then what would people hate her then? If she wasn't pregnant, would she go first? Who hates her? Somebody hates her? Did anybody say they hate Cassie? Did anybody say she wasn't the victim of abuse? Are we not going to talk about how she would break up with Diddy? Or I don't know if they broke up. But and this is what they pulled out, and people get mad. But it is what it is. And we're going to see what his expert has to say. Because he's going to have an expert too. And his expert is going to swing more in his way. So since we're talking about experts, are we going to give this expert more credence or some credence, whatever his expert has to say, to try to explain his addiction or why he did some of the stuff that he did or why he acted the way that he did or even why she in between time had multiple boyfriends? We had Kid Cudi, we had an NFL player, we had who else? We had her husband she got now. Initially, it was Ryan Leslie. That was initially who she was with. And that's why he said she was sneaky and he didn't trust her and Diddy didn't even want to be with her. So she said she wanted to prove to him she was the woman for him. We just gonna forget about all the testimony, I guess, so that we could paint the narrative how we want to paint it. The narrative ain't all pretty. Some people feel that she should have been able to leave, that she wasn't forced to do things. I don't think anybody I think we've all heard the psychology on why people stay. So I don't think, there are people like why she ain't leave after all this time. The problem she has with that, again, it'll probably be an expert, is a lot of times with abuse, you're isolated. They don't let you be around your friends. They don't let you just go. It was times where she had texts where she hadn't spent no time with him. They don't let you go outside. And it just seems like the times he would act a whole nut and be jealous is when she would be like, all right, maybe because we ain't talked in a couple of weeks, I'm about to move on and go with Kid Cudi or whatever, however that happened. Then she's with him. Every time he's found out about the man she's messing with, she was with him. It wasn't like he broke in her house, saw her with somebody, broke in her house, took her phone. It wasn't anything like that. He literally, somehow they connect back up. It seems like in her mind, she always knew she would get back with him. Pam, why do you say that? I'm glad you asked. Because she had a burner phone with Kid Cudi. Her current husband, allegedly, I guess she had him under a whole different name. So even though she was with these people in between time, in the meantime, when he wasn't giving her no attention or whatever their issues were, she would mess with other people and then try to conceal that they were messing with each other. So the defense pulled that out as well. So this is why some people have mixed feelings, because no, there is no particular picture of what a victim looks like. There's not. Everyone has different experiences, but there are generalizations on some things that are applicable to every person on when it comes to DV. And some of the things that may be commonplace just was not common in this situation. That's all. People is mad, child. They like, I don't want to talk to you no more if you say anything nice about Diddy. I'm like, damn, okay. Bye. Thank you, Parley Keys. Welcome to the membership. We appreciate you coming. Columbus said, Pam, I keep hearing the Diddy gave the mama the $20K back. However, the mama didn't say that on the stand, nor was that brought out by the defense. So what did you get that from? That was in the transcript, allegedly. Most of the stuff you heard was from tweets, and the tweets are obviously not completely, they're not completely complete. I didn't get that transcript, so that was something that I heard was in the transcript. Have I personally laid eyes on it? No, I have not. But allegedly it was in the transcript, and I could probably get a screenshot of it, but I'm not getting every single transcript. And I don't think that was the one I got with her mom. I thought I did, but I didn't. Raynette said the mom did testify to getting the money back. That's from Raynette. All right. All right. Nicole said the mom did say he got the money back. All right, y'all. The ancestor said the mother did say that on the stand, but it was hearsay from what I gathered. Cassie told her mother he was demanding $20K or releasing the video. So let me ask you this, the ancestor, because again, I didn't get her she wasn't on her that long, and I ain't spending that much money for a transcript for one testimony that was 40 minutes. And then I gotta just have the rest of the transcript because you can't get it piecemeal. Did she testify that Diddy called her personally demanding the $20,000? Or did she testify that Cassie is the one that, because I think, wasn't it an email or something? Cassie is the one from an email that I saw that told her mom that he asked for the $20,000. Was that ever confirmed by Diddy to the mom that Diddy actually asked for $20,000? Was that just something that Cassie may have said? Because if that's the case, then people look to she was strung out. So if, people be trying to get money in all different ways. So I never was clear on how that was relayed. No one outside of Combs benefited from the alleged racketeering, and there was no agreement between the party. That's from Eve Has Its Faces. Yeah, I saw an email post City 99. But was there ever a direct conversation with Diddy where he was asking for that? So Zeta said Diddy's assistant provided wire instructions. Okay. But what did Cassie tell Diddy the money was for? So I guess maybe they're using that as an inference that because he asked for wire instructions, it corroborates that maybe he did ask for the money and then he gave it back, I guess is what they're saying. So no direct conversation. It was the email, and then allegedly, I guess the according to what you're saying, because I didn't read it, there was some wire instructions asked. Okay. It is hearsay. I mean, what she got on there to say, Cassie told me. I mean, but they can say it was state of mind as to why she sent him $20,000. So what you would say is, did you ever send him $20,000? Yes, I did. And why did you send him $20,000? Because Cassie sent me an email and said that if he didn't get the $20,000, he was going to release the tape. That's not hearsay because it shows her state of mind. Well, there's an exception to the hearsay rule because it goes to show what her state of mind, which is why she would have sent the money. Not saying what happened was okay at all. The evidence and act so far is horrific, but RICO not so much so far. We're just in the beginning. So MRT said Cap has to tie this up on the stand. Why did he kidnap her? So yeah, she probably would have. But even with Capricorn, if it has something to do with Diddy, I mean with Cassie, it shows jealousy. He did that. So it sounds like everything he did that they're showing so far was because he was a jealous boyfriend. That's what they're going to, basically, that's what they're saying on the defense. It wasn't because I was trafficking her. I wasn't committing crimes in order to keep control over these women, like for sexual purposes or for money or interstate commerce or whatever you're saying. That's not why I'm doing it. I was doing this because we were in a relationship and I just ain't ish. Because that's pretty much what his lawyer said in the beginning. He sucked, he despicable, the video sucks. And sometimes you got to call a thing a thing. You admit what you can't deny. But he was just a toxic person. He sat down with Carisha. She asked him in the little interview they did, do you consider yourself toxic? He like, yeah. I do. So Lovejoy said, what about, that was allegedly the best friend situation she said, she gave a whole different reason. I can't remember. But I believe Cassie said it was because they were doing drugs together. And Diddy was upset about that, which means, he can say he was upset because it was his girlfriend. And that was his reasoning why. Does it justify it? No. But does it explain why? And then I guess because after that, of course, they're not friends anymore because she stayed with him. And so the friend said, I'm suing both of y'all ninjas. Okay. Both of y'all can get this good. Wherefore, I pray this court give me relief and the amount of. And so Diddy gave her $30,000. She probably wasn't really hurt. She got hit with a hanger. So she might not have been hurt for real, but it was 30, so she got her 30,000 and she was like, I'm going to take my money and I'm out. And another thing, remember the guy, Jonathan Oddie? Apparently he had a tape and he was threatening to release the tape. And that NDA and settlement was going around the internet. Did he pay Oddie the $5 million or whatever it was they're alleging for him not to release the tape to protect Cassie? So my thing is, if Diddy is this goon, why he ain't just, some of y'all say he allegedly make people disappear. Why pay the $5 million? Why not let the ex-worker that apparently got some mental health problems, that's why he was there, I guess, trying to shoot up, pow up the whole, down in Mar-a-Lago. Why he ain't just do that? Why he pay him? I'm just asking. The ancestor said Lovejoy Cassie paid half. Was it for abuse or FO? They alleged abuse, but let's be for real. Right. Why would he protect her and pay the man? It's just so much that comes out that makes it muddy. And I get it. When you have a favorite, that's with anything. And I noticed that on YouTube. And this is why I can't get with windmilling for people on YouTube. Why? Because when you're wrong, I'm going to say you're wrong. That's just what it is. But when you like somebody, you find a way to ignore things that may be against that person. And I think that's just the nature. People can't get past that video. So they don't care what things favorable to Diddy come out. They're going to always say he did everything they said he did and he should go to prison. That's what they're going to think. They don't care how much I pull the statue up, what got to be proven, how many times we go over the indictment. They don't care. That's just how they are. So this is my purpose of coming on. Some people come on to be salacious and they want to, oh my God, they said, look at the Punisher, look at this, look at that. Like they want to focus on the salaciousness of it all. But I mean, I throw that, we talk about everything because the facts are what they are. But I'm trying to explain how it works because most of you guys are going to be jurors if you ain't been already. And I want you to keep in mind, it ain't personal. It's the law. If it was my people, would I want them to get the fair shake? That's all. You have definitely taught me that we have to follow the evidence and weigh all the evidence and testimony before. And then when it comes to evidence too, you mentioned the weight. The jury's gonna place more weight on some testimony than they are on others. They probably may not place as much weight on Don Rashad, and they may place a lot of weight on Cassie. We don't know. I believe he didn't want his image tainted from the video. I don't think he wanted anybody to know how freaky he is. What? He ain't want people to know that he was out here. I don't think we got in testimony that he's actually been the one. And I mean, it was even a time where Cassie was asking to have a girl do it. Said, now how y'all, people saying that all of this was coercion, but they got text messages towards the end, like towards the last freak off, where she said, I've been really thinking about having a woman join us. So now you're trying to add your spin on how you want it. So when she testified, she said, I had love for what was. When they asked, do you love him? I have love for what was. I don't hate him. I don't hate him to this day. So yeah. We'll see what his explanation is for alleged victim 2. I don't know. Alleged victim 2, I think, is supposed to be recent too. So let's go to that. Okay, so we went over the conspiracy, took the racketeering conspiracy. Y'all get the gist. They're saying people arranged it and all of that. So then they say Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in the freak offs and other commercial sex acts. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career financial opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victims' appearances. Remember, there was testimony with the makeup artist. Did Sean Combs look and see how he looked, how she, look and had to approve and send pictures on was she okay for the look? So they're trying to combine his role as a label owner with, how they control looks and brands. They do all of that to being this form of abuse. Monitoring their medical records. Remember, they said, I guess he had doctors and all of that, controlling their housing and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak offs and other commercial sex acts, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Following the assaults, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the enterprise, frequently worked in concealing his misconduct by offering to provide medical assistance or other financial benefits to the victim. So remember, we had the alleged security that was taking them to hotels, I guess, and giving them food, which would be concealing, is what they're trying to say. Then they talk about the enterprise. They carry firearms. That's why they asked about whether he had firearms. They follow his directive on financial payments. He forced them to work long hours with little sleep through use of, among other things, physical force, psychological harm. So, that would have been something that Don Richard was saying, but that forced labor wasn't allowed in. When employees witnessed to his abuse or other threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included arson and multiple acts of kidnapping, including one instance of kidnapping during which Combs carried and displayed a firearm to a female victim. So y'all think that's Capricorn, huh? That's what y'all think. We'll see tomorrow. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. On one occasion, Combs dangled a female over an apartment balcony. There was a lawsuit of which he allegedly dangled one of her friends over the balcony. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023 following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressure witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. So I guess when she came out with this, they're saying people were contacted, which came out when they were doing the bail package, and they were alleging that he had contacted people to tell them not to testify. Now they actually get into the racketeering conspiracy, which is what the actual claim is. So they're saying the defendant and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with Combs Enterprise, described in paragraph 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States. That is, to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity as the term is defined. So they're saying multiple acts involving kidnapping, multiple acts involving arson. We heard of one. I don't know about the other ones. Multiple acts of bribery, multiple acts of witness tampering, multiple acts of forced labor, multiple acts of trafficking, multiple acts of illegal prostitution and other illegal activities, multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute, narcotics, controlled substances. So we got to count 2. We did trafficking. So count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. This is the last count. That's the one we didn't go by. From at least in or about 2009. So they're talking about Cassie. Up and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York, the defendant knowingly transported individuals in interstate and foreign commerce with the intent that the individual engage in prostitution and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of multiple individuals, including but not limited, victim 1 and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce. So they're saying, like, Cassie was flown all over, and they're saying she's a victim, and she was a victim of prostitution, as opposed to, like they're saying, is the girlfriend. So victim 2 that you guys are talking about, which I guess is Jane Doe. So they're saying this was in 2021. This is what they're alleging. From at least in or about 2021 up and including in or about 2024. So this was supposed to be in the last 3 years. The defendant in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and reckless disregard of the fact, means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion. So apparently with the alleged Jane, with the Jane Doe, there's an allegation that as recently as last year, he was still engaged in these freak offs, and she was the victim. So they're saying that they used to cause the person to engage in commercial sex acts and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained victim 2 and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim 2 to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and reckless disregard of the fact that victim 2 was engaging in commercial sex acts. We already know that he's going to allege that he and victim 2 had a relationship, and that I guess maybe he paid for apartments or whatever, but he's going to say there's a relationship there too as well. I think he has consent, allegedly, as the reason. Actually, it appears she may be on some tape or something. I don't know. You said this was a FRICO, not a RICO. Really? And the reason why I say that is, hold on one second. So there was a letter from Jane Doe, right? And this was May 20th. And Jane Doe was trying to basically, there was something that was filed of which the media and the press was trying to get all communications to the court. So apparently Jane Doe's attorney was communicating with the court because Jane Doe was going to testify, and that was not on the docket. And so the court ordered that everything needed to go on the docket because it's public record. So they're trying to ask that there be some type of redactions, right? So this is Jane Doe's attorney. This letter is submitted in abundance of caution on behalf of my client, Jane Doe, who has been granted the right to proceed at trial under a pseudonym and also identified as victim 2 in the above captioned case. In order to comply with the court's order, assuming it applies to interested parties, such as Ms. Doe, as well as the prosecution and defense, and in the interest of efficiency, this letter serves as a request to be added to the docket as an interested party in the above captioned case, such that I might file documents by ECF. So they want to be able to file their documents, be added to the case so they can file documents so that it can be on the docket for public, so the public can view it, because that's in compliance with the court order that everything's supposed to go to the docket. But clearly they weren't a part of the case, so any communications were probably via email and in the judge's chambers, which was not public. And you had Inner City Press, who provides these tweets. They complained that they keep talking about things and communications in the court. However, they are not a part of the docket. At present, this request pertains in particular to my May 14, 2025 letter submitted to the court by email opposing the May 12, 2025 letter of Robert Balin and Alexander Perloff Giles, requesting on behalf of certain news organizations the ability to view actually explicit audio-visual trial exhibits that would not be played in open court. Because my May 14th letter to the court also included a request that the letter be filed under seal with only a redacted version to be filed publicly, this letter also constitutes an application for leave to file my May 14th letter with redactions as set forth in the proposed redacted version. So basically, it sounds like victim 2, they may have some video. And the news media requested, which is interesting because I don't know if it was anything I would want to watch. They requested that the public be allowed to view these X tapes, okay? And apparently Jane Doe is concerned that she may be a part of it, or maybe she knows that she may be a part of one of them videos. And so they are requesting that her letter opposing it and the reasoning why, which was not on the docket, be redacted if they have to put it on the docket. So what they have done is they have filed a response to the motion from the media trying to view the X tapes, and they're trying to oppose it and say that there's no reason, they don't have an interest. Yes, the public has the right to view what's going on in the courts and all of that, but this is kind of taking it too far. So it may be some video coming out with Jane Doe. So yeah. Thank you, Queen Brielle, for gifting the memberships. I appreciate that. You said no, thank you. So yeah, so it's just a lot happening. This was just our precursor, because tomorrow I might go over the tweets during the day, even though you guys know that they are missing stuff, which means we will kind of be sitting here until lunchtime, and then maybe I'll break because I have other work to do. But my intent is to get the testimony of Capricorn, because I want to know everything. I want to know line by line, because they do have missing parts. But, you know, during the daytime, sometimes it is cool for us to convene and actually go over the tweets as well. So I may do both, but most certainly I'll be asking for the transcript. So yeah. You said light skin privileges are a real thing. That's what Cassie said. Where'd she say that at? Missing a lot, and he is by, you know what, Wayne, that's what we got. He's able to you know, he can only tweet so much. I think a lot of times though, what I did notice is that he does, like, it'll be a question and we don't necessarily get the answer, and then he moves on to the next tweet. So I think he's just trying to get the substance out there so we know what they're talking about. But I know it's tough, you know, to try to tweet out as fast as you get the information. So you guys know. So the last thing, let's pull up what the statute says on what has to be proven for prostitution. Let me see. Is it this? Yeah. So under section 18 USC code 2421, whoever knowingly transports any individual in interstate or foreign commerce or in any territory or possession of the U.S. with the intent that such individual engage in prostitution or in any sexual activity for which any person can be charged with a criminal offense or attempts to do so shall be fined under this title or in prison not more than 10 years or both. So, of course, they're going to add prostitution because if they're saying these ex-workers came, but they're saying that she was prostituted. So, I don't know if there is I have to look into that a little bit more on how they're kind of using it. But yeah, so under the indictment, they're saying she was prostituted by Diddy by having her sleep with these commercial workers. So that's what they're saying. And so, yeah, that's that. When a victim is there as a doe, sometimes I've seen it in different ways. They actually will block their face. Sometimes if it's televised, the cameras cannot show who it is. I assume the sketch artist is not going to be able to sketch her face. I don't know if she's going to actually be viewed or not. But they just can't say her name. So nobody knows who she is. So yeah, you said there it is. That's the only thing. That's why I said the only thing I can kind of see based on what they're saying is perhaps prostitution. And honestly, if he just gets charged with one thing, that may be his better bet. 10 years less, you're gonna do less than 10 years if that happens, I'm sure. But the rest, I'm just not so sure of. I think the coercive part, force and fraud, that's necessary is a problem. And I think there's an agreement, the agreement aspects of it and little other aspects that can be fought on. The RICO conspiracy is also an issue right now. But again, we're just getting started. You know what I'm saying? Right now, he sits there. He is an innocent man. He is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And really, in theory, you're not supposed to judge until you hear all the evidence, and we just haven't heard it. Have people rush to judgment? They have. Have people pick and chose what they want to talk about on the internet? They have. Have people like swung one way on the pendulum or on the scales of justice? They have. And we haven't even heard half of the evidence. We're not even 50% in. If they got 4 weeks left, this is like the third week of testimony. So after Friday, we'll be about halfway in, but according to their timeline. So yeah. So we're going to try to keep an open mind. I know it's hard because we seen that video and we done heard some stuff we probably ain't never heard of or didn't even know what was going on. Y'all ain't even know why he was over there going on them red carpets and going on stage talking about it's Diddy. It's Diddy. He just got done having the freakiest night of his life. Nobody even knew that. So you never know what people do behind closed doors. You just never know. Why was Ghislaine Maxwell different? I always felt she was a victim too. Ghislaine was like his, and I didn't follow that case like that. So this is my speculation. I don't even know what she was actually. I think she was charged maybe with the aiding and abetting him. The problem that was with her is she actually vetted these girls allegedly. So she was the girlfriend in public because she was his age, but allegedly he liked younger girls. And we're talking about Epstein. And so she sent people out, or she actually was a part of getting people to come to the house. I mean, how clear can you be? But as y'all know, he never went through the process because he allegedly committed unaliving himself. So yeah, she was a madam. That's from Fin9J. It says she was a madam. Yeah, and they were underage. That is true. Zabat, thank you so much for this. You know how some people just got little known facts that you just never would have known? Like female gorilla seduce males by actually doing a twerking dance. Like, and how did you find that information? Did you Google it? Was that like on YouTube or something? Like, how did you find that out? I'm just curious. Huh? think he'll take the take the stand too. You know, you just got known. Like my oldest son, I used to call him little known fact. My sister used to always be like, little known fact. Because he'd just randomly be like, do you know there are male and female pumpkins? Like what? But that was something my mom is science. My bonus mom is a science like degree holder and she's a scientist. So like it was little things that she would teach my kids and they would come home and you'd be like, what? So we'll go out to get a pumpkin or something. And he's like, is this a male or a female? I'm like, what are you even saying right now? Huh? A male or a female? Like, who cares? You're trying to like get pumpkin seeds out of them. Like, who cares? But that's kind of like how he was. Mm-hmm. Just give you random information that you just could have went your whole life without knowing. Well, that's what she said. Okay. What is the Jeffries case? I don't know what that is. I might if I know what it is. Huh? All right, y'all. I don't want to thank you guys so much for make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For all of you guys that spent your holiday with me, I am forever grateful. I appreciate it. I really do. So what I want you guys to do, y'all see this blind lady? This justice is blind right now. So I want you guys to see she got the scales of justice there. Let me show you. Y'all see that scales of justice? I need you guys to let the scales of justice does what it was intended to do, okay? That's what I want for you guys. Truly humble under God. If y'all remember, if y'all believe that, I got some land to sell you over in Australia. Truly humble under God. I laugh so hard. I'm like, if y'all don't come up with something better. All right, y'all. Anyway, thank you guys again for all of the super chats and the new memberships. Welcome. We did a live last night, so make sure that you go check that out. It was about the guy who extracted the evidence from the computer on Cassie's computers. Then we also talked about the manager somewhat. We got into some, interesting discussions. You know how we do. So, yeah. So, yeah. All right, y'all. We out of here. I'm out of here. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. I might see you around these YouTube streets. But if not, we'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for joining. Talk to you later.